I have framed the word brutal optimism. And it comes from a Churchillian paradox that blood, sweat, toil and tears, but ultimately we shall prevail.
Business has to stand for something beyond making money. My next guest, Sanjeev Mehta, Chairman and Managing Director of Hindustan Unilever Limited, one of the largest private companies in the country, who believes in compassionate capitalism, sustainability, and has worked tirelessly to innovate business and its processes. Today, we dive deep into business excellence, leadership lessons, and understand the purpose which drives him. So, Mr. Mehta, thank you very much for agreeing to do Duologues with me. And this conversation, I'm sure, is going to be very insightful, full of inspiration for people. It cannot be a better time for us to have this conversation, especially in a couple of backdrops. First, you are taking over as president at FICCI. And second, we had the budget announcement done just about a couple of days before. So I would like to begin with having your reflections. One, on the responsibility, the priorities. Of course, I and my responsibility leading the initiatives of Electronics and White Goods Manufacturing Committee, the Energy Storage Committee, would look forward to working under your guidance. So wanted to know what are the priorities which you are setting for yourselves, one at FICCI, and any reflections on the recent budget.
First, thank you, Manish. Thank you for inviting me, and pleasure, real pleasure.
Thank you.
Panasonic is absolutely a great brand. It's a great institution, and I still remember the days when we used to have listen to music on Panasonic 2-in-1s.
Absolutely.
As they used to be called. Talking about FICCI, FICCI is an amazing institution. It has a great history, over 9 decades of service to the nation, service to the industry. I believe one of the best ways of serving the industry, serving the trade and commerce in the country without being inside the government is joining a body like FICCI.
True.
And so I'm very excited about this opportunity. And I also believe that as a nation, we are on the cusp of greatness. For India, this decade will be India's decade.
True.
Notwithstanding that we had the pandemic, but pandemic was something which impacted the entire world. I'm very bullish about India. And if India can sustain the kind of growth rate we all aim for, then in another decade and a half, we could aspire to become a middle income country.
Yeah.
And in this context, we also have to realize that FICCI needs to change.
Okay.
Change with the new times, change with the new India, the expectations of our members, and play a big role in partnering the government to create the new India. So one of the key things that initiatives which we would be embarking upon is to lay down the staircase to growth for the next 25 years for the country. And there are many areas which will emerge from this work,
Right.
which could then become the building blocks of FICCI initiatives for the next several years. But there are many initiatives which will be very intuitive.
True.
Yeah. For instance, climate and environment.
Yeah.
If India has to progress towards net zero, the private sector will have to decarbonize itself. So this will be one big thrust.
Yeah.
How do we do it? How do we help our members? And how do we become a thought leaders in this space?
Right.
The second would be, if you look at this entire digitization and extended digitization, if you bring in Industry 4.0. When the Industrial Revolution started, we were under British occupation. Same goes with internal combustion engines. When Industrial Revolution 3.0 happened, we were still a very small economy.
Yeah.
And now with our backbone of digitization, our prowess in IT, I believe we are at a very fertile stage to harness the benefits of Industry 4.0.
Right.
Then if you look at it from a perspective of MSMEs, MSMEs by their very nature are fragile.
Yeah.
Many of them, they're small, and when you have events like pandemic, they get severely impacted.
Right.
Yeah, MSMEs need access to capital, access to technology, access to talent, and FICCI can play a big role, not only just from an advocacy perspective, but also the ecosystem we have of big, strong, large companies which could help MSMEs to prosper. So that's another big thrust area. Then when you look at it, women's empowerment. There was a study done by McKinsey, if India were to have women's empowerment or women's participation in labor increase at the same rate as the lowest evolving country in Asia, our GDP could increase by 150 bips per annum.
Wow.
So just look at the potential that exists. And the sad bit is, over the last few years, women's participation in labor has come down. So we need to correct that and bring them to mainstream.
Sure.
So there are many areas. The other is, pick up startups. 21 has been a great year for startups in the country, but this is just the beginning. India needs great managers, people like yourself.
Thank you.
And India needs great entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
And FICCI can play a huge role, not just from incubation, when say an entrepreneur or a budding entrepreneur has got an idea, to help them incubate an idea, but help them in the transition and evolution to become an enterprise which can stand on its feet and become a sustained business model. So that's another big area we can focus on.
Excellent.
So I'm very excited about the world of possibilities, and I'm also very pleased that we have a great presidium.
Yeah.
So it's a fabulous team we have.
It is.
So our intent is that we have the principle of collective leadership, and our intent is also that the thrusts we bring into FICCI are not something which would change with the whims and fancies of the president, but there would be continuity. Yeah, so we are all working together to make this happen, and I believe that FICCI would be able to enhance its contribution to its members and be a great partner to the government in India's growth journey.
This would be an exciting year to look at, because I've believed over a period of time, we always used to hear that change is the only constant.
Absolutely.
I've started to believe that change of rate of change is the new constant. And while 365 days may not be enough, because what you said is kind of a huge paradigm shift, both from the structural point of view, the way FICCI and the very purpose for which the FICCI's organization exists for the stakeholders, and also the way it is looking at creating sustainability to play its role in the time to come.
Manish, the other area where we are focusing our attention on is how do we strengthen FICCI as an organization from a talent and organization perspective. So I've had some of my wonderful resources from HUL work with the FICCI team on talent and organization issues, and we will now work on it to address. FICCI has some amazing talent.
I agree.
Yeah, in the last month odd where I've interacted with them at a much more deeper level, I've been very impressed with the quality of talent.
Right.
And these are people with purpose.
You mentioned people with purpose, and this reminds me about one of your beliefs that purpose leads and profits follow. Sometimes it is difficult in an extremely dynamic environment, in particularly within our country, where there is so much of aspiration cutting across people, especially the youth. How do you inculcate a sense of purpose in this kind of very dynamic environment and let people believe that purpose leads and profits follow?
I believe in a scenario of flux in a fast changing environment, you still need your north.
Yeah.
Yeah, is business has to stand for something beyond just making money.
Right.
Yeah, that's your purpose. At Unilever, we have certain core beliefs. Our beliefs are that companies with purpose last, brands with purpose grow,
True.
and people with purpose thrive.
Right.
So, what we do is we help our people identify the purpose. As a corporation, our purpose is very clear. We want to make sustainable living commonplace. But we help the people identify the purpose so that they can lead a more enriching life. And if you can bring your own purpose in sync with the organization's purpose, then it is nirvana.
Right. It is.
Yeah, then you enjoy working, you get
Yeah.
up in the morning, you're excited to go to work, and work never becomes a chore.
True.
So, for us as a company, for me as an individual, I believe that purpose is very important. And let me translate that from a lens of Hindustan Unilever. We never tell our people that our mission in life is to create more shareholder value. No. We tell our people that if we look after our consumers,
Yeah.
our customers, our employees, our suppliers, our stakeholders at large, if you do a good job of that, then in the process, shareholder value will get created.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you look at HUL's journey in the last, say, 8 years since I've been at the helm of the company, we were a company with a market cap of about $16 billion. And in 8 years, we've now crossed $70 billion. Yeah. So we have created Delta Capital in the last 8 years, which on its own right would have been perhaps the 9th or 10th most valuable company in itself.
True.
In the country.
Yeah.
Yeah. So nearly 4 lakh crore.
Yes.
Now, this is a result of
Inculcating.
and doing the right things.
Absolutely.
You can't be obsessive about market cap.
Absolutely.
No.
Yeah.
Or making profit.
That would be one of
profit
the
has to be a result of
Yeah.
something.
True.
And business, we have a role in society to solve problems. When I mentor many entrepreneurs who are in the startup journey, and I always tell them, don't be obsessed with valuation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Focus on creating value.
Value.
Valuation will then happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so purpose is extremely important.
Yeah. So, when you look at individuals or entities, I mean, one perspective is that there has to be a specific or clear sense of purpose of their existence, and we'll potentially come back on this one towards the end of our conversation. On the other hand, to drive relevance, it is important, especially for large organizations and also for startups, to have a very clear structure in place, and which eventually in line with the changing environment, the opportunities, the evolution of the society, the technology itself, the consumer behaviors continues to evolve.
That's
we at
right.
Panasonic are about 103 years old since we came into existence in the year 1918.
It's a great company, Panasonic.
Absolutely. And this year we have kind of reinvented ourselves by restructuring. And what we have done is we have created a structure wherein governance and shared services will be provided by a separate entity for the entire group.
Yeah.
And the business divisions will be autonomous to be able to drive their own businesses and create their own future.
Yeah.
I'm sure you would have witnessed a lot of restructuring in the past, and I understand that there is a program called Reimagine HUL which continues to run.
That's
Any
right.
reflections on
Sure,
this?
certainly. First, there is a very important or very nice saying that snake will not be able to survive if it does not shed its skin.
True.
Which basically implies that if you don't change, you won't be able to survive. And organizations are like organisms.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to keep evolving with the passing time. Now, if you look at the context around us, One is the consumer trends are reshaping,
Yeah.
are changing, channels are reshaping, your competitive context has changed. In this scenario, you need to have an organization which is agile, which is more focused, and which is able to continuously reinvent itself.
True.
So, what you're talking about, what's happening in Panasonic, that's something which is happening to most organizations in the world.
Absolutely.
And Reimagine HUL is a journey which we started about 5-6 years back with an idea that we should bring in data center stage.
Okay.
We used to say our two biggest assets are people and our brands. Our brands today reach 95% of the households in the country, and they are sold through about 8 million outlets. So if you do the combination of 95% of the households and 8 million outlets, then you're talking about a massive quantum of data.
Yes.
So Reimagine HUL started by bringing in data center stage, digitization, technology across the value chain. And we have a very clear vision. We want to be the most intelligent consumer goods enterprise. That's what we have set ourselves
Nice.
on. And what this is allowing us to do is create new moats around us. You know, if I have to give you how do you make a high performance company? Mantra.
Yeah.
Yeah. First is you need massive amount of growth mindset.
Okay.
Yeah? Which includes the kind of portfolio you need to have, the market development work that you do, this entire gamut. Yeah, but as the mindset, you have to first win the battle of mind before you win in the marketplace.
True.
The second axis is you need to have distinctive capabilities which are hard to replicate. And you need handful of them which have to be not just best in class, but competitors should find it hard to replicate.
Sure.
And the third axis is high performance anatomy. Is your culture, is your talent, how you craft strategy, your fetish for execution, all that comes under high performance anatomy. When you get the three axes right, you become a high performing company. So intelligent enterprise and reimagining HUL is about creating those distinctive capabilities which others will find hard to replicate.
Excellent. So sometimes, you spoke about the mantra of success, and, sometimes it happens that this belief is a outcome of how a leader experiences his or her own journey throughout their own careers.
Yeah.
For example, in my case, when I began my career, it was more about thinking about my own ambition.
Yeah.
Subsequently, with experiences into professional life, one becomes more resilient. So it was not only ambition, but being resilient also.
Yeah.
And at a certain stage, you realize that you need to practice a large amount of humility.
That's
So
right.
essentially, these are three pillars which have shaped me as a professional over a period of time. And this somehow became central to the kind of culture which we are trying to create, the values which we are trying to instill within the stakeholders of our company.
Yeah.
Is that in your case also? And this potentially brings me to the second part of our conversation, that when you were beginning your career, and we all know that what you have accomplished, what was going through your mind then, and how have you evolved?
Okay, let me give you a bit of insight into my background. I'm a quintessential Indian middle class person. Yeah, my father worked his entire career in Reserve Bank. My mother was a homemaker. I have a brother and sister. Grew up in Mumbai, and my parents were immigrants. They came to India from what is now Pakistan.
Right.
Yeah, Punjab.
Yeah.
And so they had a very tough life.
Yeah.
So the values of hard work, integrity, love for the nation, many of those values I imbibed from my parents. And those have held me in good stead all through my life. And then I joined, I became a chartered accountant by training. That's also at some stage when maybe sometimes next we could talk about it, how like most boys of my age, I wanted to be a cricketer. And I still love cricket.
I know.
I'm very fond of it. Now it's more about watching cricket than playing cricket. But I was also influenced by my dad, who was a central banker. And some of the best time during the day we used to have was around our dinner table. And dining together was sacrosanct in my home.
True.
And my dad used to regale us with stories of what was happening in the economy, the bank, and that had a profound impact on me. So I became a chartered accountant, and after becoming a chartered accountant, my first job was with American Corporation Union Carbide. And within a year of joining Union Carbide, a little over a year, we had that ghastly Bhopal gas accident. And within a short period of the accident, I was kind of para-dropped into Bhopal to become a member of the crisis team. And I believe a boy became a man then. Yeah, at a very young age, I was part of a crisis team which was trying to manage what was perhaps the biggest industrial disaster in the world.
Absolutely.
So that has shaped my thinking in many ways. The role of corporations in society, safety, compassion in capitalism. And you talked about one trait, which I want to dwell a bit more on it. You talked about humility.
Yeah.
And I have coined a word which is called ambition. I should apply for a trademark for it.
Yeah.
And ambition is humility and ambition.
Nice.
Yeah. I believe if you have an ambition, and whenever we craft a strategy also, we start with what's the ambition we have.
Yeah.
And if you have a big ambition, then it could circumvent the constraint of resources, the constraint of skills, and the constraint of talent. But it's very important to understand that there are many variables in life which you do not control.
Yeah.
And I have seen in my career over decades, then I was working in countries which were profoundly impacted by the Gulf Wars. Then I was running Unilever's business in North Africa, Middle East when the Arab Spring happened.
Yeah.
And in our own country, we saw demonetization, introduction of GST, pandemic.
Right.
It's a series of, what could be, in many ways, you could talk about them as big challenges. There are many variables which are not in your control.
Yeah.
So it's very important to be grounded. Need to have your feet on the ground. You should never let success go to your head. Never become arrogant. But if you have a combination of ambition together with humility, then it becomes a very potent one.
Absolutely. So with experience, you learn to deal with situations of crisis, and I completely relate and agree with what you said. But sometimes it becomes very difficult to practice a stable-headed approach under such kind of situations.
Right.
I mean, what do you do to ensure that you deal with variety of situations, whether it is about success or it is about facing the challenges, keeping your head very stable? I mean, do you practice mindfulness? How does your day look like beyond work?
I don't believe in rituals,
Yeah,
but I'm a very spiritual person.
sure.
My faith in God gives me huge courage, and that helps me tremendously. The other is a sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, when the pandemic happened, Manish, we, people like yourself, people who are at the helm of the organization, you're not just responsible for yourself or for your family.
Yes.
Your responsibility is for all the people
Yeah.
who work for you, their families, people who are in our outer core.
Yeah.
And when you own up accountability for them, then you draw into your inner reserve. Look at it from this lens, that during period of crisis, people depend on you. People count on you. If you go to a kindergarten class, you will find some kids displaying leadership traits and other kids flocking around them.
Yeah.
Primates crave for leadership, kids crave for leadership, adults crave for leadership. And if you can have a leader with a good sense of purpose, who not only takes responsibility, you know, responsibility is given, accountability is taken, who takes accountability and can guide them to safety, lead them to victory, then people would follow you.
Absolutely.
And that's what you need during crisis. You know, I call it, this is a Churchillian paradox. Or I have framed the word brutal optimism. And it comes from a Churchillian paradox that blood, sweat, toil and tears, but ultimately we shall prevail. Yeah? When there is a crisis, you have to tell the people the reality, give them the reality.
Yeah.
Don't tell them that, no, we aren't
Yeah.
facing a crisis. That
Right.
would be wrong.
Yeah.
They're adults, they're intelligent
Yeah.
people. But then they also look up to you to tell them, how are you going to lead them out of crisis? That's optimism.
So a lot of people look up to you of what you have accomplished, and so much of inspiration happens. Have you kind of looked up to someone? Is there someone you've looked up
Several people. I'm a student all my life. I even learn a lot from my juniors.
to? Yes.
And I've been fortunate, I've been lucky. I've worked with some fabulous people. And in Unilever, I've worked with some amazing people. Some were Indians, Americans, Dutch, British. Out of my nearly 29 years with Unilever, I worked outside the country for 21 years. And I've had great teams, people who have given the best to me. And I keep learning every day.
Excellent.
Every day.
So
Keep
this-
getting
yeah.
inspired. I read a lot.
Oh,
So not only people whom I have met and whom I have worked with, or who have led me, or who've been part of my team, but I have also been influenced by great people in the world, by reading about them, by reading the books.
you spoke about the significance of having a purpose.
That's
I mean, what is your higher purpose, which kind of wakes you up every morning?
Yeah, you know, I have a very simple purpose: to make ordinary human beings deliver extraordinary results. Now, let me give you a bit of genesis behind it. None of us are Einstein. Yeah?
True.
We are normal human beings with normal intellect. But I believe in the infinite capacity of human beings. And none of us works even close to our rated capacity. But if we can guide people, train people, skill people, inspire people, then normal human beings can deliver extraordinary results.
True.
So that's my purpose in life.
Thank you so much. And the conversation was extremely insightful and inspirational for me. I wish you all the best for taking over as president at FICCI. I'm looking forward to working very closely with you in the year ahead. I'm sure together we are going to catalyze a lot. This is a huge opportunity ahead of us, as you rightly mentioned, that this decade is going to be for our country. So I wish you all the best for that.
Thank you, Manish. First it's been a real pleasure getting to know you.
Thank you.
I'm so delighted I got to spend some time with you today before the interview. You're a fabulous person.
Thank
You're
you.
leading your business so admirably.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that we have leaders like you in FICCI, and together we can, we will, and we shall make a difference.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Take care. God bless you.
Thank you.